Jackson's shuttle broke through the green-tinted clouds of the alien world. The landscape below was unlike anything he had ever seen. Floating islands, sparkling crystal rivers, and skies streaked with colors he couldn't name. He gripped the controls tightly, trying to steady the shuttle as the atmosphere buffeted him. The warning alarm screamed inside the cockpit, but he had no choice. He had to land. The shuttle shuddered violently as it skimmed past a massive floating city. Towers of shining metal reflected the strange auroras above. Jackson had read about this place in classified human reports, but seeing it in real life was entirely different. His mission was simple: scout the area, gather intel, and report back to the fleet. He never expected to find life, intelligent life, and certainly not royalty. A sudden jolt threw him against his harness. Warning lights flashed red and the shuttle groaned. Jackson gritted his teeth. "Not today," he muttered. He pushed every button he knew, adjusting thrust and stabilizers. Sparks flew across the control panel. The shuttle wobbled, tilted, and then, somehow, he found himself gliding gently toward a landing platform that hovered above a crystalline lake. When the shuttle touched down, the doors hissed open. The air outside was thick and sweet with a faint electric charge. Jackson stepped out cautiously, scanning the platform. The world was quiet. Too quiet. Then he saw her, the alien queen. She stood at the edge of the platform, tall and regal, with skin that shimmered like liquid silver and eyes that glowed like twin moons. Her hair floated as if it had weightless energy of its own. She wore a flowing gown that seemed alive, shifting colors as she moved. Every step she took radiated authority. Jackson felt his pulse quicken. He had read reports about alien royalty, but nothing prepared him for the real thing. "You are far from home, human," she said. Her voice was melodic but firm, echoing slightly in the strange air. Jackson noticed the faint hum in her words, a kind of power that made the hairs on his arm stand. I am Jackson," he said cautiously. "I'm a scout. I didn't mean to—" "You did not mean to land here," she finished for him, her glowing eyes narrowing slightly. "And yet here you are." Jackson nodded. He could feel the tension in the air, a mixture of curiosity and caution. "I come in peace. I have no weapons drawn," he said, holding his hands slightly away from his sides to show he meant no harm. The queen's expression softened just a little. "Peace," she repeated. "A human word. It sounds small, but sometimes it carries great weight." Jackson blinked. I hope it does." The queen studied him for a long moment. Then she stepped closer, her gaze piercing. "You are strong," she said finally. "Brave. But strength alone does not secure one's place here." Jackson swallowed. "I'm learning that quickly." There was a pause. The queen turned her eyes to the floating city in the distance. "I am old," she said quietly. "Older than most could imagine. And yet, my life has been lonely." She looked back at Jackson, her expression unreadable. "I have watched generations of warriors, of diplomats, of humans like you, pass through stories and myths. You are different. I feel it." Jackson didn't know what to say. He had faced hostile aliens before, but none spoke like this, with both authority and sorrow. Finally, the queen's gaze softened. "I am too old for love," she said, her voice almost breaking. "But my daughter is young, strong, and capable. If one of your kind were to bond with her, perhaps she could carry forward what I cannot." Jackson froze. The words struck him like a thunderbolt. "You want me to— what?" The queen shook her head slightly, a hint of regret in her expression. "I offer her not as a gift but as a choice," she said. "She may accept or she may not. But I cannot guide this myself. I am too old, too bound by duty. It is her future, not mine." Jackson looked at her, then down at the platform, unsure how to respond. This was not in any protocol, not in any mission brief. He was trained for combat, diplomacy, survival, but not this. He had never been offered a human-alien bond by a queen herself. "Your daughter," Jackson repeated cautiously. I don't even know her. I don't know if she wants. The Queen's eyes sparkled with a mixture of amusement and sadness. That is why I am offering her choice. If she refuses, you will leave. But if she accepts, perhaps she will find a partner who is brave, kind, and wise beyond her own people's ways. Jackson's mind raced. He thought of his world, of his fleet of orders and missions. Nothing prepared him for this, yet he could feel something stirring inside, a sense that destiny had brought him here, to this floating city, to this queen, to her daughter. Before he could respond, a figure appeared behind the queen. Leora, the princess, stepped forward. She was striking, with hair like liquid gold and eyes that mirrored the auroras above. She moved with grace and confidence, but her gaze was sharp, assessing Jackson carefully. You are the human? She asked, her voice steady but curious. I have heard of your kind. They say you are strong, clever, and reckless. Jackson straightened. I try to survive, he said with a small smile. Sometimes that's enough. Leora tilted her head, studying him. Perhaps, but I do not need a protector. I need someone who can see me, as I am. The Queen placed a hand on Leora's shoulder. She is wise beyond her years, the Queen said softly, and she must choose for herself. Jackson, you will not force her hand. You will only show her your character. Jackson nodded. I understand. For a long moment, the three of them stood silently. The green auroras above shimmered, reflecting off the floating city and the crystal lake below. Jackson felt the weight of the moment pressing down on him. He had been trained to face danger, to fight aliens, to survive impossible odds, but nothing had prepared him for this, navigating the politics, emotions, and customs of a world completely alien to him. Finally, Leora spoke. If you are to remain here, human, you must prove yourself. Not through strength alone, but through wisdom, courage, and respect. Jackson straightened, determination settling over him like armor. I will do my best, he said firmly, whatever it takes. The Queen nodded, a faint smile breaking through her stern expression. Good. Then perhaps you may yet earn her trust. As the sun set behind the floating islands, casting long shadows over the crystal waters, Jackson realized that his mission had changed. He was no longer just a scout. He was a guest in an alien world, a participant in a story far larger than himself, and perhaps, unknowingly, a part of the destiny of a queen and her daughter. He took a deep breath. The air was electric, tinged with alien energy, but also full of possibility. This was the beginning of something new, something dangerous, and something that could change not only his life but the fate of the alien world itself. And as he looked at Leora, standing tall and proud beside her mother, Jackson felt a strange sense of certainty. No matter how foreign this world, no matter the dangers ahead, he would face them. Not as a human scout, not as a soldier, but as someone willing to understand, to respect, and perhaps to connect in ways he had never imagined. The first night on the alien world was quiet but full of unspoken questions. Questions about trust, duty, courage, and the strange bond forming between a human and a princess. Jackson knew this was only the beginning, and whatever came next, he would face it with open eyes and an open heart. The morning on the alien world was unlike anything Jackson had ever experienced. The twin suns rose slowly over the floating islands, painting the sky in shades of green and gold. Mist rolled across the crystal rivers below, sparkling like a million tiny stars. Jackson stood on the palace balcony, looking down at the floating city, his mind still trying to process the Queen's offer. Princess Leora approached quietly. She moved with the grace of a predator, yet her eyes were curious, studying Jackson carefully. Do you sleep well in our air? She asked, her voice calm but firm. Jackson turned to her with a small smile. Better than I expected, he admitted. It's different but peaceful. Leora nodded. Different is the norm here. Humans often find it strange, but you do not seem afraid, Jackson shrugged. Fear is part of survival. But I do not let it control me. She raised an eyebrow. Then perhaps you are braver than most humans I have read about. But courage alone does not earn trust. Jackson's smile faded slightly. Then tell me, how do I earn it? Leora studied him silently for a moment, then said, through action, by understanding my world, by respecting its rules, and by showing that your heart is as strong as your hands. She led him away from the balcony into a large courtyard. The courtyard was vast, filled with floating platforms that connected gardens, fountains, and training arenas. Exotic plants glowed faintly, their colors shifting in rhythm with the light. Alien birds, shaped like crystal shards, sang with voices that sounded like wind chimes. Jackson's eyes widened. This is where the young warriors train, Leora explained. And this is where I will test you. Jackson felt a spark of nervous excitement. A test was something he could handle. What kind of test? He asked. You will face challenges, she said simply. Not to defeat me, but to prove your mind, your heart, and your spirit. The first test was simple yet strange. Leora guided him to a floating platform surrounded by a shallow pool of luminous liquid. Small glowing creatures hovered above the liquid, shifting constantly. Leora handed Jackson a small tool shaped like a crystal wand. Catch them, she said. Do not harm them. Move carefully. Patience is key. Jackson looked at the creatures. They darted and zipped unpredictably like fish in water. He raised the wand carefully, adjusting to the fluid motion of the platform. Slowly, he began to guide the creatures, using gentle taps of the wand to direct them into small energy cages floating nearby. Leora watched silently, her expression unreadable. Hours passed. Jackson's arms ached, but he persisted. By the time the suns were high in the sky, he had caught every creature without hurting a single one. Impressive, Leora said at last. Most aliens fail within minutes. Most humans would panic entirely. Jackson wiped his brow, smiling faintly. Patience and focus. That's all it took. Leora's eyes softened. You learn quickly, perhaps. You can understand more than I thought. The next challenge tested his agility. Leora led him to a narrow bridge that floated hundreds of feet above the crystal lake. The bridge moved and shifted, responding to their weight. Cross it without falling, she said. Your mind must stay calm. Balance and attention are everything here. Jackson stepped onto the bridge, feeling it sway beneath his feet. He kept his eyes forward, controlled his breathing, and focused on each movement. Several times the bridge tilted dangerously, but he adjusted quickly. When he reached the other side, Leora nodded approvingly. Humans are not often exposed to floating terrains, she said. You handled it well. By the end of the day, Jackson had passed several other tests. Riddles that required logic, puzzles that demanded creativity, and scenarios that tested his instincts. Leora's challenges were designed not to defeat him but to observe his character. And Jackson did not disappoint. As the sun set, painting the sky in deep emerald and gold, Leora finally spoke in a quieter tone. You are different, Jackson. Not just strong, not just brave, but human. You think differently, you feel differently, and yet you endure. That is rare even among my people. Jackson felt a warmth in his chest. Praise from her was not common. I do what I must, he said humbly. Leora nodded. And yet, even in doing what you must, you show kindness, patience, and thoughtfulness. My people, we respect strength, but we admire the heart even more. Jackson glanced at her. Then I hope my actions will speak louder than words. Leora allowed a small smile to appear. They already have. Their conversation was interrupted by a sudden sound, alarm bells echoing across the palace. Jackson's hand instinctively went to his side, though he had no weapon drawn. Leora's eyes sharpened. Trouble, she said. Some factions in the city oppose the Queen's decisions. They see outsiders as threats, and perhaps they are right. Jackson's pulse quickened. What kind of trouble? Leora glanced at him, then back at the city below. Kidnappers, assassins, political rebels. Some will stop at nothing to seize power or control my mother's reign. Jackson nodded. Then we deal with it. What do you need me to do? Leora hesitated. You have proven your heart today, Jackson. But now you must prove your courage. We go into the city not as warriors, but as observers. We must find the threat before it finds us. Jackson followed her through secret corridors. Corridors lined with glowing murals depicting the Queen's history, battles, and victories. The air hummed with energy, and the floor seemed to pulse slightly beneath their steps. When they reached a high balcony overlooking the city, Leora pointed to a shadow moving among the crowd. There, she whispered. A group of masked figures. They are plotting something. Likely an attempt to kidnap me. Jackson's instincts kicked in. He scanned the area, analyzing escape routes, possible allies, and hazards. We need to intercept them quietly, he said. We can't alert the entire city yet. Leora nodded. Follow my lead. They descended into the streets, blending with the floating market crowds. Humans would have felt out of place here, but Jackson adapted quickly, following Leora's graceful movements and observing her people's customs. Their target was close, moving cautiously among the citizens. When they finally cornered the group in a narrow alley, Jackson saw their weapons, strange, energy-based devices that hummed dangerously. The kidnappers were well-trained, but not prepared for Jackson's quick thinking. He grabbed a small reflective panel from a nearby stall and used it to redirect light, momentarily blinding them. Leora struck with precision, disarming two of the group before they could react. The rest fled into the crowd. Jackson and Leora exchanged a glance. You are efficient, Leora said with a hint of admiration. You taught me well, he replied, smiling faintly. They returned to the palace under the glow of the twin moons. Jackson's chest was still racing, but he felt alive. Leora looked at him with a new respect. You have passed more than my test today, Jackson. You faced danger, kept your mind clear, and showed heart under pressure. Jackson shook his head. I only did what anyone would do for someone in danger. Leora smiled softly. Perhaps, but not everyone would do it as calmly, as wisely, or as fearlessly as you did. The queen appeared quietly behind them. She had observed from afar, as always. Her eyes glimmered with a mixture of pride and relief. It seems my daughter may yet have a companion worthy of her choice, she said. Jackson bowed slightly. I do not seek reward, only understanding, and perhaps friendship. The queen's smile was faint but genuine. Then you shall have both if Leora allows it. But remember, Jackson, the path ahead will not be easy. The city, my people, and the dangers of this world will test you in ways you cannot yet imagine. Jackson met her gaze steadily. I am ready. Leora watched him silently, the bond between them growing stronger. The human had proven himself, not through weapons or strength alone, but through courage, intelligence, and heart. And though she would not admit it yet, she felt a spark of something unfamiliar. Hope, curiosity, perhaps even trust. As the night deepened, Jackson lay on the palace balcony, looking at the alien stars above. He thought of home, of Earth, of the fleet, but he also thought of this strange world of the Queen and of Leora. He understood now that his mission had changed. He was no longer just a scout. He was a guest, a protector, and perhaps in time something more. The wind carried whispers of the city below, of secrets, dangers, and alliances yet to be formed. Jackson smiled faintly. For the first time in his life, he felt a sense of purpose beyond duty, an understanding that bravery and humanity could make a difference, even on a world so alien that every step was a challenge. And in the quiet, glowing night, Jackson and Leora both knew this was only the beginning. The morning air was heavy with mist, and the twin suns had not yet fully risen over the floating islands. Jackson moved carefully through the alien forest, following Princess Leora. The trees here were unlike anything he had seen before. Their trunks glowed faintly and their leaves shimmered as though filled with tiny lights. Strange sounds echoed from above, soft cries of creatures he could not identify. Stay close, Leora whispered, her voice tense. The rebels are still in the city, but they may send hunters into the outskirts. We cannot risk being followed. Jackson nodded, adjusting the strap of his pack. His hands itched to hold a weapon, but he knew this was a test of patience and strategy as much as skill. He had survived many dangerous missions before, but this world was different. Every step required careful thought. Every sound could be a threat. They moved in silence for hours, navigating through floating platforms of rock suspended in the air by strange magnetic forces. Leora occasionally paused to check their route, consulting a small crystal device that projected a glowing map of the surrounding lands. Jackson admired her focus. She was not only strong but incredibly smart, able to read the land and anticipate danger in ways he had never considered. Finally, they reached a hidden valley far below the city. A river of glowing liquid cut through the area, its surface shimmering in colors Jackson could not name. Mist rolled across the water, hiding the banks. The valley seemed alive, and Jackson could feel the energy vibrating beneath his feet. "This will be our camp for now," Leora said, motioning to a small cave hidden behind thick vines. "We must stay hidden until it is safe to return to the palace." Jackson nodded, stepping inside the cave. The air was cool and damp, but it smelled fresh. Leora had already set up a small area for him to rest, with blankets made of soft, glowing fibers. He sat down, taking a deep breath. Despite the danger, there was something peaceful about the hidden valley. "You are quiet," Leora said, sitting across from him. "Do you have many questions about this world?" Jackson smiled faintly. "Many. Too many to answer at once." He looked around the cave, taking in the alien markings on the walls. "But one question I have is, why are you so brave? You face threats from your own people, from outsiders. Yet you never show fear." Leora's eyes softened. "Bravery is not the absence of fear. It is the choice to act despite it. I have learned that through necessity. My people expect me to lead, to protect, to survive. Fear would make me weak. But courage gives me strength." Jackson nodded thoughtfully. "I understand that. On my world, we say courage is measured by what you do when no one is watching. Sometimes it's the small choices, not the big battles." Leora smiled faintly. "Perhaps you are not just strong in body, Jackson. Perhaps you are strong in spirit, too." They shared a quiet moment, listening to the sounds of the forest outside. But the peace was short-lived. A rustling sound reached their ears, followed by the faint hum of energy weapons being powered up. Leora tensed instantly. "They've found us," she said softly. "Hunters. They may not know exactly where we are, but they are searching." Jackson's pulse quickened. "Then we prepare," he said, scanning the cave entrance for possible exits. "We can't fight them head-on. Too many." Leora nodded. "We will use the terrain. The valley is alive, and it responds to those who understand it. Follow me." She led him out of the cave, moving silently along the edge of the river. The glowing liquid reflected the early light, creating illusions on the surface. Jackson realized quickly that the valley itself could be used to mislead pursuers. Leora pointed to a series of floating rocks above the river. "Jump from one to the next. They may try to follow, but only those who understand the flow can cross without falling," she said. Jackson followed her instructions carefully, leaping from rock to rock. The rocks wobbled slightly under his weight, but he adjusted quickly, using the momentum to balance. Leora moved effortlessly, her every step precise. The hunters were close behind, their shadows flickering across the mist. Suddenly, one of the hunters fired a bolt of energy. It hit a rock near Jackson, sending sparks flying. He jumped instinctively, landing on the next rock safely. Leora glanced back. "Focus, Jackson. You can't hesitate." He tightened his grip, adjusting his footing. The hunters fired again, but the reflections on the river confused them. They missed repeatedly. Jackson realized that Leora's knowledge of the valley was their greatest weapon. He followed her lead, moving swiftly, silently, and with growing confidence. By the time they reached a narrow ledge near a waterfall, the hunters were forced to stop. The water roared, creating a wall of noise and mist that blocked sight and sound. Leora smiled at Jackson. "You did well. Most would have panicked long before this point." Jackson exhaled, feeling the tension leave his body slightly. "Thanks to your guidance. I would have failed alone." Leora shook her head. "No one survives here alone, not even the strongest warrior. It is not just strength. It is understanding, trust, and timing. Today, you showed all three." They spent the rest of the day in the hidden valley, moving carefully through the forest and setting up small traps to mislead any pursuers. Jackson learned quickly how to read the land. The way the plants shifted, the subtle sounds of movement, and the energy vibrations that indicated presence. Leora taught him techniques her people used for centuries, blending with the environment and predicting danger before it arrived. That night, under the glowing stars, they sat by a small fire made from phosphorescent stones. Jackson cooked a simple meal, using supplies Leora had brought. The two of them talked quietly, sharing stories of their lives, of Earth, of alien traditions, and of hopes for the future. "I never thought I would meet a human like you," Leora said softly, handing him a small glowing fruit. "You are different. Not only brave, but thoughtful, careful, and patient. These are qualities rare in my world." Jackson smiled, feeling a warmth in his chest. "Thank you, Leora. And you are stronger than anyone I've ever met. Not just in skill, but in heart. You lead, protect, and survive, yet you do not lose yourself to anger or fear." Their conversation was interrupted by a distant roar. Both froze. Leora stood instantly, her senses alert. "A predator," she whispered. "Not a human or alien, but a creature of this valley. Large, fast, and curious." Jackson's instincts kicked in. He drew a small energy blade from his pack. "What should we do?" he asked. Leora glanced at him, then at the path leading deeper into the forest. "We move. We do not fight unless we must. The valley will hide us if we listen to it." They ran silently, following hidden paths Leora knew well. The creature's roar echoed behind them, but it never caught up. Jackson marveled at her knowledge. She moved with complete awareness of the environment, predicting every sound and shadow. By the time they reached another hidden cave, Jackson was breathing heavily, but exhilarated. "That was incredible," he said. "You really understand this world?" Leora nodded, allowing a small smile. "It is my home. I must understand it, or it will consume me." She looked at him with seriousness. "And now, you have begun to understand it too. You are learning more than most humans could hope for." Jackson felt a sense of pride and responsibility. He had come as a scout, but now he realized he was more than that. He was a protector, an ally, and perhaps, in time, a trusted companion. The bond between him and Leora was growing, not just through survival but through shared respect, trust, and understanding. As they settled for the night, Jackson lay on a bed of glowing fibers, staring at the alien sky. He thought of Earth, of the fleet, of his home world. But he also thought of this valley, this strange planet, and of Leora. He understood that the challenges ahead would not just test his skill, but his heart and mind. Yet he felt ready. Whatever threats came, whatever dangers lurked, he would face them alongside Leora. Together they had survived hunters, predators, and the unknown, and together they would face whatever the alien world, and its people, had in store. For the first time since arriving, Jackson felt a sense of belonging, not just as a human, in an alien land, but as someone trusted, someone capable, and someone who could make a difference. And in the quiet of the glowing valley, as mist curled around the trees and the twin moons rose high above, Jackson and Leora both understood. Their journey had only just begun. The sun was high above the floating city when Jackson and Princess Leora returned from the hidden valley. The journey back was tense, each step measured, each shadow observed. Jackson had learned much during their time in the wilderness, about the alien world, its strange creatures, and most importantly, about Leora. She was more than a princess. She was intelligent, brave, and fiercely independent. "This way," Leora said, leading him through a series of hidden corridors that bypassed the main streets. "The factions that oppose my mother are watching. We cannot risk being seen together in public." Jackson nodded, following her silently. He had learned to trust her instincts completely. She moved like the wind, precise and confident, always a step ahead of danger. When they finally reached the palace gates, a small crowd of royal guards awaited them. They bowed as Leora and Jackson passed. The princess's expression remained calm, but her eyes were sharp. "Inform the queen we have returned safely," she ordered. The guards nodded and dispersed. Jackson glanced around the palace courtyard. The city below bustled with activity, unaware of the silent tension building above. "Do you think the factions know we returned?" he asked quietly. Leora shook her head. "Not yet, but they will. And when they do, we must be ready." The two of them entered the queen's private chambers. The alien queen was waiting, seated on a throne of shining crystal. Her eyes, as always, seemed to glow with an inner light. She studied Jackson carefully, her gaze measuring, assessing. "You have returned," she said. Her voice was calm, but there was an underlying tension. "And you survived." "That pleases me." Jackson bowed slightly. "We faced some challenges, Your Majesty, but we handled them." The Queen's eyes softened as she looked at Leora. "And my daughter?" "She is well," Jackson said. "Stronger than ever. She faced danger with courage, and she led me through the valley with wisdom." The Queen nodded as if weighing his words. "You speak honestly, human." "That is rare." A moment of silence passed. Then the Queen's expression darkened. "But the city does not welcome outsiders lightly. The factions that oppose me grow bolder by the day. They see this alliance with a human as a threat. And perhaps it is." Jackson met her gaze steadily. "Then we prepare. We cannot stop the factions from thinking what they will, but we can show them that courage, wisdom, and trust matter more than fear." The Queen studied him for a long moment. Then she spoke, her voice softer, almost vulnerable. "Jackson, I have offered my daughter to you, in the sense that she may choose a companion. But know this, the decision is hers. Not mine. She may refuse. She may accept. Whatever she decides will shape not only her life but the future of this world." Jackson nodded. "I understand, and I will respect her choice, always." The Queen's eyes glimmered with approval. "Good, that's all I ask. But understand, there are those who will not respect your intentions. They will see you as a threat." "They will test you?" Jackson straightened. "I am ready." The Queen's attention shifted to Leora. "And you, my daughter? What do you wish? You have seen this human face danger and survive. You have witnessed his courage and wisdom, but now, you must speak your heart." Leora took a deep breath. Her eyes met Jackson's. "Mother, I will speak. I respect him. I trust him. And I want to choose my own path." The Queen's expression softened. "That is wise. But do you truly understand the consequences?" "Yes," Leora said firmly. "I understand. And I accept them. I choose him." Jackson felt a mix of relief and awe. He had expected challenges, tests, and dangers, but nothing had prepared him for this moment. The princess's choice was not just a gesture of trust, it was a statement of her independence, her strength, and her judgment. The Queen's eyes glistened, a rare display of emotion. "Then it is done," she said softly. "But know this, both of you. The city, the factions, and the political landscape are not forgiving. You will face opposition. You will face danger. And you must face it together." Jackson nodded. "We will. Whatever comes, we will face it together." Leora reached for his hand, a simple gesture that carried weight far beyond words. Jackson felt the warmth of her trust and courage, and he knew that their bond was more than strategy or survival. It was mutual respect and understanding. The Queen rose from her throne. "Then let us prepare. The factions will not wait, and the city does not forgive weakness." She gestured to a group of advisors. "We must show them that strength, wisdom, and unity can guide this world, and that fear has no place in leadership." Jackson observed the advisors carefully. They were a mix of human-like and alien figures, each with unique abilities and insights. Some were loyal to the Queen, some were cautious, and a few were clearly skeptical of his presence. He could sense their thoughts, their doubts, their hidden agendas. Leora squeezed his hand gently. "We will navigate this," she whispered. "I trust you." Jackson nodded. "And I trust you. Always." Over the next few days, Jackson and Leora moved through the city carefully. They attended meetings with the Queen's advisors, observed the factions' movements, and prepared defenses in case of attack. Jackson's strategic mind, honed on Earth in countless missions, proved invaluable. He suggested ways to strengthen communication, fortify key positions, and anticipate the rebels' moves. Leora's knowledge of the city and its customs allowed them to implement these strategies without raising suspicion. Despite the tension, Jackson and Leora found moments of quiet together. They trained, shared meals, and explored the palace gardens, learning more about each other. Jackson was amazed by Leora's intelligence and resilience. She was not only brave but wise beyond her years, able to balance diplomacy, strategy, and personal strength with ease. One evening, as the twin moons rose above the city, casting long shadows across the palace, Jackson and Leora stood on a balcony overlooking the streets below. The city seemed calm, but Jackson knew better. Danger lurked in every shadow, and the factions were still plotting. "You have changed," Leora said softly, her eyes reflecting the moons. When you arrived, I thought humans were reckless, impulsive, limited in understanding, but you see the world differently. You adapt, learn, and act with both strength and wisdom." Jackson smiled faintly. "And you, Leora, are more capable than anyone I have ever met. Brave, clever, and kind even when you don't have to be." She looked at him, a faint blush coloring her cheeks. "Perhaps we are more alike than I thought." Before Jackson could respond, an urgent message arrived from the palace advisors. A faction leader had gathered a group of rebels near the Eastern District, planning to stage a demonstration of power. The Queen needed them to respond, and quickly. Jackson and Leora moved swiftly through the corridors, coordinating with the Queen's forces. When they arrived, they saw the rebels, armed and defiant, hoping to intimidate the citizens and weaken the Queen's authority. Jackson stepped forward calmly. "You do not understand what you are challenging," he said, his voice steady. "This city is not ruled by fear. It is guided by courage, wisdom, and unity. If you wish to oppose it, you will face the consequences." The rebel leader sneered, stepping closer. "And who are you to tell us what to do, human?" Jackson held his ground. "I am someone who has seen danger, faced impossible odds, and survived. I am someone who respects this world and its people. And if you threaten the innocent or challenge the Queen unjustly, you will regret it." The rebels hesitated. Jackson's calm confidence, his clear mind, and the visible support of Leora and the Queen's forces created a tension they had not expected. Slowly, one by one, they lowered their weapons and retreated, realizing that strength without wisdom would fail against unity and courage. Leora looked at Jackson, a mixture of admiration and relief in her eyes. "You did it," she whispered. Jackson shook his head. "We did it, together." When they returned to the palace, the Queen greeted them with a faint smile. "You have proven yourselves," she said, "not just to me but to my people. And perhaps you have begun to change what it means to trust, to lead, and to choose." Jackson felt a sense of accomplishment, but he knew the journey was far from over. Challenges still awaited them. Factions that opposed the Queen, threats from outside the city, and the complexities of interstellar diplomacy. Yet for the first time he felt that together with Leora, he could face whatever came next. As the night deepened, Jackson stood on the balcony once more, looking at the city lights below. He thought of Earth, of the fleet, of his home world, but he also thought of this alien world, the Queen, and Leora. He understood now that courage, wisdom, and heart were more important than strength alone. And in the quiet of the palace, as the stars glimmered above the floating city, Jackson and Leora both knew the most difficult choices lay ahead. But they would face them together, undaunted, united, and ready for whatever destiny had in store. The morning sun cast long golden beams over the floating city, illuminating every tower, garden, and platform. Jackson stood on the palace balcony, watching the citizens begin their day. The tension of recent events had not disappeared entirely, but there was a sense of calm, a fragile peace born of courage, wisdom, and unity. Princess Leora joined him quietly, her steps light against the glowing floor. She did not speak immediately, simply observing the city below. Jackson noticed the small smile playing on her lips. "The city looks different today," she said softly. "Less tense, more alive." Jackson nodded. "That is because people saw courage in action. They saw strength guided by wisdom, and they know we are united." Leora looked at him, her expression serious. "And yet challenges remain. Some factions will not give up easily. They will test us again." Jackson took her hand gently. "Then we face them together as we always have. Fear does not control us. We act with heart, mind, and courage." She squeezed his hand, a gesture that conveyed trust, admiration, and perhaps something more. "You have changed my world, Jackson. Not just by surviving, but by showing what humans can offer. Bravery, insight, and honor." Jackson smiled faintly. "And you have shown me what this world is worth protecting, what it is to fight for something larger than oneself." Their moment of quiet reflection was interrupted by a messenger arriving at the palace. Leora read the message quickly, her eyes narrowing slightly. "Another faction plans a gathering near the southern district," she said. "They aim to provoke unrest, to challenge the Queen's rule openly. If we do not act, chaos may follow." Jackson straightened. "Then we act. But we do not fight recklessly. We show them strength without cruelty. We show them that unity and courage can guide this city." Leora nodded. Together, they gathered a small team of trusted advisors and guards. Jackson studied the city's layout, analyzing escape routes, strategic positions, and crowd movement. He had learned much from his missions on Earth, but this alien world required creativity, adaptation, and careful observation. As they approached the southern district, they saw the faction gathering. Rebels waved banners and brandished weapons, trying to intimidate the citizens. The crowd looked tense, uncertain, afraid. Jackson's pulse quickened, but he remained calm. Leora stepped forward confidently. "Citizens of the city," she called out, her voice echoing across the plaza, "you are not here to witness fear. You are here to witness courage, wisdom, and unity. Those who seek to divide you will fail because you are stronger together." The rebels sneered, thinking they could provoke fear, but Jackson stepped beside Leora, his stance firm and unwavering. "I am not here to threaten you," he said, his voice carrying across the plaza. "I am here to show you what it means to protect, to endure, and to lead with honor. Those who act in darkness will never triumph over those who act with heart." The crowd shifted, uncertainty replacing fear. Whispers ran through the citizens. Many had heard of Jackson's courage in the valley, his calm under attack, and his quick thinking in the palace. They began to see him not as an outsider, but as someone who had risked everything for their safety. The rebel leader stepped forward, trying to intimidate them. "You are human," he shouted. "You cannot understand our world. You do not belong here." Jackson held his ground. "I may be human, but I understand something all of you must learn. Strength alone does not command respect. Courage, wisdom, and heart do, and those who wield them will protect this city, no matter where they come from." The rebel leader glared at him, then at Leora. He realized that the princess and Jackson were united, their resolve clear, their courage undeniable. Slowly, the rebels began lowering their weapons, their confidence waning in the face of true leadership. Leora's voice rang out again. "You see now that division and fear do not lead to strength. Unity and courage do. Choose wisely." One by one, the rebels dispersed. The citizens watched, some with relief, some with admiration, but all with a sense that something remarkable had occurred. Jackson and Leora had not just prevented chaos. They had demonstrated the power of understanding, strategy, and humanity. After the event, the Queen called a council meeting. Advisors, citizens, and even former faction leaders attended. Jackson and Leora stood together at the head of the room, their presence commanding attention. "Today, a new chapter begins," the Queen announced, "one guided not by fear but by courage, wisdom, and unity. Jackson, your actions have proven the value of human insight and bravery. And Leora, your leadership and courage have shown what this city can achieve when trust is placed in the right hands." Jackson bowed slightly. "It was an honor to serve, Your Majesty, and to protect this city alongside Leora." The Queen nodded. "You have earned my respect and the respect of my people. And now, Leora, you have chosen your companion, your ally, and perhaps something more." Leora looked at Jackson, her eyes calm yet full of emotion. "I choose him," she said clearly. "Not because of his strength alone, but because of his heart, his wisdom, and his courage." A murmur ran through the council. The Queen's eyes softened, pride evident in her gaze. "Then it is done. Let this union mark the beginning of a new era, one where courage and understanding guide our world and fear has no place." Jackson felt a wave of relief and gratitude. The journey had been long, filled with danger, tests, and uncertainty. But in the end, trust, courage, and unity had prevailed. He reached for Leora's hand, feeling the warmth of her trust and the bond they had forged through shared trials. Over the following days, the city began to adjust to the new era. Jackson and Leora worked alongside the Queen to rebuild trust among the citizens, integrating human strategies with alien wisdom. Jackson's experience, combined with Leora's leadership, created a harmony that had never existed before. They faced challenges, disagreements, lingering fears, and occasional threats, but they met each one together. Jackson had learned to navigate not only physical danger, but also political and social complexities, while Leora continued to grow as a leader, her understanding of the human heart complementing her alien wisdom. One evening, as the twin moons rose over the city, Jackson and Leora stood together on a balcony overlooking the glowing streets. Citizens moved below, some carrying lanterns, others tending to gardens or walking with family. The city felt alive, vibrant, and safe. "You have changed this world, Jackson," Leora said softly. "Not with weapons, but with courage, insight, and understanding. You have proven that humans are capable of more than most believe." Jackson smiled faintly. "And you, Leora, have shown me what it means to protect something worth fighting for. Together we can face whatever comes next." They stood in silence for a moment, listening to the soft hum of the city and the gentle wind that carried the scent of alien flowers. "Do you think it will always be this calm?" Jackson asked. Leora shook her head with a small smile. "No world is ever completely calm, but we have learned something important. Courage, wisdom, and heart can guide us through any storm." Jackson nodded. "Then I am ready. Whatever comes, we face it together." The Queen appeared quietly behind them, observing the two with pride. "You have both proven yourselves," she said. "This city, my people, and my world are stronger because of your choices. And now you may begin your journey, not just as protector and princess, but as partners in a future guided by courage and understanding." Jackson and Leora exchanged a glance, a silent promise passing between them. The path ahead would not be easy, but they were ready. Together they could face any challenge, overcome any danger, and guide the city into an era of hope and unity. As the night deepened and the twin moons reflected off the crystal rivers, Jackson realized that he had found more than adventure or duty. He had found purpose, trust, and a bond that transcended worlds. And in Leora, he had found not only a companion but a partner, someone who understood courage, heart, and the true meaning of strength. The city below glimmered like a constellation, alive with hope and promise. Jackson and Leora stood hand in hand, ready to face the future. Whatever came next, they knew they would meet it together, undaunted, united, and guided by the principles that had carried them through every trial. In that moment, on the balcony of the palace above the glowing streets of the floating city, a human and an alien princess stood side by side, and for the first time, they understood that true courage was not measured by victories alone but by trust, heart, and the bonds forged in the fires of challenge. The future awaited, and they would meet it as one.